All right. So, you sent me this episode of Master English podcast about, internet slang and social media
Yeah.
language. And I have to say, it's kind of amazing. Like it's almost like every time you think you've kind of got a grasp on it, there's a whole new set of terms and abbreviations and ways that people are communicating online.
Right.
So I thought it'd be really interesting to kind of dive into this episode and really try to understand what's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fascinating because you can really see how language evolves,
Mm-hmm.
especially with new technology and with new social behaviors. And I think the internet and now especially social media have really accelerated
Yeah.
this kind of linguistic change.
Yeah, it's like this accelerated evolution of language almost.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think this will be really helpful for anyone who, like me, sometimes feels a little bit lost. Like, wait, what does that even mean?
Right.
So it's like a decoder ring
Exactly.
for internet speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so the podcast kind of breaks things down into these categories.
Okay.
And I thought we could follow that structure.
Sounds good.
So, we've got kind of the classic internet slang. Then there's, the slang around truth and opinions, which is really interesting.
Okay.
And then there's like the language of modern dating. So
Yeah.
very specific to that whole world.
Right.
And then how social media judges everything with these very
Oh, yeah.
short
Yeah,
terms.
They're very concise.
Yeah. And then like the slang we use just to talk about interacting on social media itself.
Okay.
So like a meta level of slang.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that structure.
Okay. So why don't we start with like way back when, we're talking like the OG internet slang.
Right. The dinosaurs.
The dinosaurs, exactly. So I'm talking
Yeah.
LOL, RFL, BRB, like these terms that feel like they come from a different era,
Right.
like a bygone era of the internet.
Yeah, for sure.
So, LOL, laugh out loud. I mean, that was like the go-to, reaction to something funny. But, thinking about it now, when was the last time I actually laughed out loud when I typed LOL? It's almost like it's become more of a way to like soften a message
Yeah.
or show like mild amusement without any actual audible laughter.
Yeah, it's like a little chuckle.
Yeah,
Or a little smile.
exactly.
I didn't even
Just a little acknowledgement.
yeah, like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
But I'm not actually, rolling on the floor.
right. And that brings us to ROFL,
Oh, yeah.
like rolling on the floor, laughing. Hey, when do you ever see that anymore?
Forgetting
Like, it feels
it's
so
over the top.
so dramatic
And like,
great.
it's almost like we don't have time to like,
Oh,
we need something shorter. We need something faster.
yeah.
And then BRB, be right back. The podcast actually calls this a relic
Oh, yeah.
of like the Anim and MSN Messenger days.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those? Like you'd actually like get up from your
You
computer.
physically be away
right, yeah.
from the computer.
You would leave.
Yeah.
And now it's like our phones are practically glued to our hands.
Exactly. We're always kind of there lurking.
We're always there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so BRB just feels very
Quaint.
quaint.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, remember when we used to
Like you.
announce that we were leaving the internet? And it's interesting to think about, those early abbreviations like LOL, ROFL, BRB. They were really driven by that need for speed.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had to type quickly and you wanted to be concise. But the podcast points out that as the internet and especially social media kind of developed,
Yeah.
the motivations behind using slang really shifted.
Right.
It became less about efficiency and more about kind of expressing subtle emotions,
Yeah.
establishing a group identity, and,
Yeah.
and being trendy. What's cool, what's current.
Yeah. Showing that you're in the know
Exactly.
with what's hip and happening
So true.
online. Okay, so let's move on to the next category then, which is the slang we use for truth and opinions.
Right.
And I think this is really interesting. So we're talking about cap, no cap, and based.
Okay.
So cap is basically like saying lie or fake.
Right.
Like if someone's like, "Oh, I can run a mile in 3 minutes,"
Right.
you'd be like, "That's cap."
That's cap.
Yeah. And it's so direct and it's so blunt.
It is.
I mean, why do you think that is? Like, why has this kind of bluntness become so prevalent online?
Well, I think it could reflect a certain skepticism towards online pronouncements.
Mhm.
We're all aware that people present these kind of curated versions of themselves
Yeah.
online. And so cap is like this really quick way to just cut through that and say, I don't believe you.
Yeah, you're exaggerating. You're being
Me.
fake, basically.
Right.
And then there's no cap, which is like the opposite. It's like
Yeah.
saying no lie or
Seriously.
right, like for real.
For real. Yeah.
This is the truth. And the podcast is this great example. Like, this podcast is the best no cap.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, obviously we agree with.
Of course, no cap.
But it's like you're emphasizing that sincerity, even if it's a little bit playful.
Yeah. A little bit tongue-in-cheek.
Exactly. But still genuine.
And then there's based, which is really interesting because it seems like the meaning has really evolved.
Oh, definitely.
So the podcast mentions that it originally meant like someone being unbothered by judgment.
Right.
But now it often describes someone who's like confidently holding on to an unpopular opinion. It's like saying, yeah, this is what I think, and I don't care if you disagree.
Right.
Like, deal with it.
It's very, I'm going to stand my ground.
Yeah. So what do you make of that shift? Like, is it that people are just like craving that?
Well, I think there is a desire for
that kind of like unfiltered,
authentic expression.
Yeah.
And even if it goes against the grain.
And I think it's interesting how that word based has become almost like a badge of honor in certain online spaces where it's like, look, I'm willing to go against the dominant narrative.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to be controversial.
Exactly.
And so it's almost like, connecting these terms together like cap, no cap, and based, they really point to this value that's placed on authenticity online. Like we really want to get to what's genuine,
right? What's real, what's true. And even if it's, like you said, potentially controversial.
Yeah, even if it's something that, a lot of people might disagree with.
Right.
It's like that rawness is almost prized in a way.
It's almost like a counter reaction to the kind of overly curated, polished,
like picture perfect lies that we see so much of online.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to the next category, which is, the world of dating.
All right.
Which has its own whole set of slang terms.
Of course.
And the podcast talks about ghosting, simp, and riz. So ghosting, sadly, I think, is something that a lot of people who have done any online dating have experienced.
Yes.
It's that, you're talking to someone, maybe you've even gone on a date or two, and then suddenly they just disappear.
Poof. Vanish without a trace.
No explanation.
Yeah, no response.
Like the podcast gives this example of someone just like suddenly stopping all replies.
Yeah.
And you're like, hello?
Yeah, like, did I say something wrong?
I know what happened.
Did I do something?
And I offend you.
Yeah.
Like what's going on?
Yeah.
So what do you think is like behind that? Like why has this become so common in the world of online dating?
Well, I think part of it might be this lower sense of social accountability that we sometimes have online. It's easier to kind of detach when you're not face to face.
It's like it's less real almost.
Yeah, you don't see the person's reaction.
Right.
You don't have to deal with the awkwardness.
The consequences.
Right.
Okay, so then we have simp, which has definitely gone through some changes, I think.
It has.
The podcast points out that it initially meant someone who was like excessively admiring,
right,
often romantically.
Yeah.
But now it's often used more playfully to describe someone who's like trying a little too hard to impress someone they're interested in.
Yeah.
Like the example they give is buying someone flowers every day is like a total simp move.
Total simp move.
Which is kind of funny.
It is funny.
But, it can be like a lighthearted jab or depending on how it's used, a little more critical.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how that meaning has shifted. Do you think that's common with online slang? Like it kind of starts one way and then
it mutates and it evolves.
And it gets broader.
It gets adopted by different communities and they put their own spin on it.
Totally.
And so the original meaning can kind of get twisted or broadened.
And simp is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then finally in the dating world we have riz, which I really like this one.
Yeah.
It's short for charisma.
Okay.
And specifically like those smooth flirting skills.
Got it.
Like if someone's got W-riz, it means they're just like really successful at charming their crush.
Yeah, like they know how to work it.
Yeah, they've got the magic touch.
They got the moves.
So it's all about that kind of effortless charm.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting that we have this term that celebrates this very specific skill.
Right. And it's valued clearly.
In the dating world.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially online.
And it's also interesting that it's been like condensed down into this slang term.
It's key.
It's like we need that brevity,
Yeah, it's got to be quick. It's got to be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got to fit into a tweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay, so clearly online dating has not only changed the way that we meet people.
Yeah.
But the language that we use to talk about it.
For sure.
Okay, so let's move on to social media's judgment system.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where we get LW and mid.
Right.
And these are so concise. I just love it.
They're so efficient.
Yeah.
Like, there's no room for misinterpretation.
Nah.
It's like, boom, this is the verdict.
Yeah. L for loss or something bad. Like if you failed a test today, L, like that's it.
Yeah.
No need to explain further.
Right.
And then the opposite is W for win or success.
Right.
So like you got a promotion, W.
Yeah.
Again, very straightforward, very binary.
Yeah.
Do you think this like oversimplification is a reflection of how social media kind of frames everything?
Yeah, I think there is this tendency to see things as successes or failures.
Yeah.
Like you're either winning or you're losing.
Yeah.
And it fits into this kind of gamified nature of social media.
Right.
Where you're constantly looking at likes and shares and followers.
Right.
It's like who's got more points.
Yeah. It's all about like who's ahead, who's behind. Okay, and then there's mid, which kind of adds a little nuance.
Yeah.
It's like for mediocre or average.
Right, like it's not terrible,
Yeah.
but it's not great either.
Yeah, it's just kind of...
It's just there.
Yeah, the podcast gives the example of like a movie that was really overhyped, but then it was just mid.
Right.
Like
it was okay.
It was okay.
But I was expecting more.
Yeah, I was expecting to be blown away, and I wasn't.
Exactly.
And you know, mid is interesting because it does acknowledge that there's this in-between space.
It's not just the extremes.
It's not just the extreme.
Of good or bad.
Yeah.
There's this whole middle ground of meh.
Of meh.
Which is where a lot of life happens, actually.
Yeah, so true.
Right.
And the podcast makes this really interesting point that, you know, these simplified reactions like L, W, and mid, they really reflect this kind of desire for quick opinions and instant validation.
Right. We want everything to be easily digestible.
Yeah.
Shareable, you know, fit into a bite-sized piece of content.
Yeah, and it's almost like we need that constant feedback loop.
Yeah.
Of like, am I winning? Am I losing? Is this good? Is this bad?
And the faster the better.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to have to wait.
Yeah, we don't want to have to think too hard about it.
Exactly.
It's like, just give me the quick judgment.
Just tell me what to think.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to the last category, which is the slang of social media interaction itself.
Okay.
So this is where we get DM, ratio, and FOMO.
Okay.
So DM, direct message. I mean, that's pretty universal now.
Yeah, it's become the default way to have a private conversation.
Only public space.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting.
It is. Yeah, it's like this little secret room off to the side.
Yeah, and the podcast talks about like sliding into someone's DMs.
Oh, yeah.
Which has become this like, you know, either for flirting or networking. Like it's this way to kind of make a connection that's a little bit more private.
A little more discreet.
A little more discreet, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then ratio. This is the one that can be brutal.
Yeah, this one can sting a little bit.
It can sting because it's basically when a reply gets way more likes than the original post.
Right.
And it's basically signaling like, you messed up.
You're wrong.
You're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, the podcast gives the example of a bad tweet getting ratioed.
Right.
Like, the replies just like...
explode.
Yeah, they're all like disagreeing or making fun of it.
Yeah, it's like a public shaming almost.
It's like the internet's way of saying, we don't agree with you, and we're going to let you know. Loudly.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we have FOMO.
Oh, yes.
Fear of missing out.
The classic.
The classic. And I think this is one that probably everyone who's ever used social media
has felt at some point.
Has felt it. Yeah.
Right.
Like you're scrolling through, you're seeing everyone seemingly having this amazing time.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I wish I was there.
Right. You're just stuck at home.
Yeah.
You know, watching everybody else have fun.
Yeah. And it's that feeling of like, I'm missing out.
I'm not part of the in crowd.
Yeah. And it speaks to that, you know, that social comparison that's just built into social media.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like you're constantly...
You're comparing yourself to others.
Comparing yourself.
Yeah. And seeing how you measure up.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, DM, ratio, FOMO, they all point to this focus on engagement and popularity and validation.
Right.
Like, are people liking my stuff?
Yeah. Am I part of the conversation?
Yeah. Am I being seen? Am I being heard?
Am I relevant?
Yeah. So this has been quite a deep dive.
It has.
Into the world of internet slang.
The ever-changing world.
And social media language.
Yes.
And it's really amazing to see how quickly these terms kind of emerge and evolve and sometimes disappear.
It's like a living language that's just constantly morphing and changing.
It's like watching evolution in real time.
Right, and it's not just about the words themselves. It's
Yeah.
about how we're communicating and how our communication styles are changing
Yeah.
to adapt to these new technologies and these new social norms.
Right.
So these terms, even though they might seem kind of silly or trendy,
Yeah.
they actually reflect these deeper changes in how we interact with each other.
Yeah, it's like a window into our collective psyche,
Exactly.
almost.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, like, with the speed of online communication,
Yeah.
how will language continue to change in the years to come?
Right. Are we going to see even more condensed forms of communication?
Yeah.
Like even shorter abbreviations,
Yeah.
more emojis,
More emoji.
more visual forms of communication?
Yeah.
Or maybe there will be a counter movement
Interesting.
where people start to value nuance more
Yeah.
and they start to use more complex language.
Yeah, like a pushback against the oversimplification.
Yeah, because we've lost something in this drive for brevity.
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about.
It is.
Oh, this has been so fascinating. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive
My pleasure.
into internet slang.
It's been fun.
It has been.
Yeah.
All right, and to all of you listening, thanks for joining us, and, keep an ear out for those new slang terms.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. The evolution continues.
It never stops.
It never stops.